Rich kid mocks struggling father. Unaware LeBron James is behind him. What happened next will leave you absolutely speechless. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. It was a cold Thursday evening in downtown Cleveland, and the fluorescent lights of Miller's grocery store cast a harsh glow over the tired faces of late-night shoppers. The wind outside rattled the windows as families hurried through their weekly shopping, hoping to beat the approaching storm. David Martinez stood in the baby formula aisle, his weathered hands trembling slightly as he counted crumpled dollar bills for the third time. At 34 years old, David worked 2 jobs as a night security guard and weekend janitor to support his 18-month-old daughter Sophia after his wife Maria had passed away in childbirth. David's world had shrunk to 2 simple priorities: keeping Sophia fed and keeping a roof over their heads. His clothes were clean but worn, his work boots scuffed from countless hours on his feet. The baby formula he needed cost $37.43. David had $35.62 in his pocket. He stood there staring at the price tag, like it might somehow change if he looked long enough behind him. The store hummed with the quiet conversations of other late-night shoppers, the soft squeak of shopping cart wheels, and the distant beep of checkout scanners, creating a soundtrack of everyday American life. That's when Brandon Sterling walked into the aisle, 19 years old and every inch the entitled rich kid. His designer sneakers alone cost more than David made in a week. Brandon's father owned 3 luxury car dealerships in the area, and Brandon had never known want or struggle. His perfectly styled hair caught the store lights as he grabbed an energy drink from the cooler, his phone constantly buzzing with notifications from his social media accounts, where he posted pictures of his latest purchases. Brandon noticed David immediately, standing there counting money with the desperation of someone who couldn't afford to make a mistake. The sight seemed to amuse him in a cruel way. "What's the matter, old man?" Brandon called out, loud enough for nearby shoppers to hear. "Can't afford baby food on your janitor salary?" His voice carried the casual cruelty that only comes from someone who has never truly struggled. The words hit David like a physical blow. David turned slowly, his face flushing with embarrassment and anger.
"Sir, I'm just trying to buy formula for my daughter,"
he said quietly, his voice steady despite the humiliation burning in his chest.
"Please, just leave me alone."
Brandon laughed, stepping closer, his expensive cologne mixing with the sterile air of the grocery store.
"Oh, this is Rich, a grown man begging for baby formula. What kind of father can't even feed his own kid? Maybe you should have thought about that before having children. You can't afford."
The aisle fell silent. Other shoppers pretended not to notice, but the tension was impossible to ignore. An elderly woman pushed her cart past them quickly, avoiding eye contact. A young mother with her own baby looked away, uncomfortable witnessing such public humiliation. David's hands clenched into fists, his entire body shaking with a mixture of rage and shame, but he couldn't afford to lose control. He couldn't risk being banned from the store, or worse, getting arrested. Sophia needed that formula. "Listen, kid," David said, his voice low and controlled. "I don't want any trouble. I'm just trying to provide for my family." Brandon's eyes lit up with malicious glee as he sensed David's vulnerability.
"Oh, you don't want trouble,"
he mocked, pulling out his phone and beginning to record.
"Well, too bad. Trouble found you. Look, everyone,"
he announced to the aisle.
"We've got a deadbeat dad who can't afford diapers. This is what happens when poor people have kids they can't take care of."
David felt his world crumbling around him. The embarrassment was overwhelming, but worse than that was the fear that someone might recognize him, might tell his boss at work about this public humiliation. He needed both his jobs to survive. "Please," David whispered, his voice breaking. "Just stop." Brandon was recording everything, his phone capturing David's humiliation for his social media followers.
"This is going viral,"
Brandon announced with glee. "Maybe next time you'll think twice before shopping where you can't afford to be." That's when a deep voice spoke from behind them. "Hey!" Brandon's head snapped around to see a tall figure approaching from the end of the aisle. The man was imposing, easily 6'8", with an athletic build that spoke of years of professional conditioning. He wore a simple Lakers hoodie pulled up over his head and dark jeans, but there was something about his presence that commanded immediate attention. His voice carried an authority that made the entire aisle fall silent. "Is there a problem here?" the man asked, his tone calm but with an edge that suggested he wasn't someone to be trifled with. Brandon's confidence faltered slightly, but his arrogance quickly returned. "No problem here, old man. Just having a conversation with my friend here about financial responsibility." The tall man stepped closer, his face still partially hidden by his hood, but his eyes visible now, burning with intensity that made Brandon take an involuntary step backward. "Financial responsibility," the man repeated slowly, like he was tasting the words. "What do you know about financial responsibility?" Brandon's chest puffed out again, the presence of another adult seeming to validate his behavior in his twisted mind. "I know enough. My dad owns 3 dealerships. I know what it takes to succeed in America, unlike some people who make excuses for their failures." The man nodded thoughtfully, then turned to David, his expression softening completely. "Sir," he said, gently, addressing David directly. "What's your name?" "David," David replied quietly, still holding the baby formula like a lifeline. "David," this man continued, "I can see you're a good father, trying to do right by your child. Don't let anyone make you feel ashamed of that." David looked up, meeting the stranger's eyes for the first time, and saw something there that he hadn't seen in months: genuine respect and understanding. "Thank you," David whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The tall man turned back to Brandon, his demeanor changing completely, the gentleness replaced by something much more intense. "Young man," he said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had faced real adversity, "do you have any idea what it takes to be a father? To work multiple jobs just to keep your child fed and safe?" Brandon scoffed, still recording. "Of course I do. Money management, it's not that hard if you're not lazy." The man's jaw tightened, but his voice remained controlled. "Money management," he repeated. "You think this is about money management?" Brandon's phone was still recording, capturing every word as he doubled down on his cruelty. "Yeah, exactly. People like him," he gestured dismissively at David, "need to learn to live within their means instead of expecting handouts. Maybe get a better job, stop making excuses." The atmosphere in the aisle had grown electric. Other shoppers had stopped pretending not to listen, drawn by the intensity of the confrontation. The tall man reached up and slowly pulled back his hood, revealing his face for the first time. Brandon's phone nearly slipped from his hands as he found himself staring at LeBron James. The king himself, standing in a Cleveland grocery store, defending a struggling father. The recognition hit Brandon like a freight train, his cocky demeanor crumbling as he realized who he had been arguing with. LeBron's expression was serious, his eyes boring into Brandon with the intensity of someone who had built an empire on hard work and determination. "Let me tell you something about excuses," LeBron said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had overcome poverty, homelessness, and every obstacle life could throw at him. "I grew up in Akron, Ohio, not far from here. My mom raised me on her own, working multiple jobs, just like this man. We didn't always have enough money for food, let alone anything else. And people like you, people who inherit everything and understand nothing, would have called us failures too." Brandon stood frozen, his phone still recording, but his hands shaking now, as the reality of the situation crashed down on him. This wasn't just any random adult. This was LeBron James, and he had just humiliated himself in front of one of the most respected men in America. What would you do in this situation? Comment below. Have you experienced karma like this? Share your story. Who do you think was right? Team David or Team Brandon?